What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Everyone's having a great day today. You're obviously joining me from a new set. I mean not new, because you guys have seen me filming here before. Usually I'm outside with the car, but today it's just really hot, and I just came back from a trip and don't want to be in the heat anymore. I was in Florida over the weekend for Labor Day, and I spent a lot of time in the sun, and as y'all probably can understand, I am not a fan of heat. It's ironic living in the Southeast, but I like to be cold. So I'm taking the time to heal from my light sunburns, and because thankfully I was under a tent the majority of the time, and able to enjoy this. And the car is absolutely filthy, so I figured I'd give you guys probably better audio quality than my GoPro, and in a set that's a little bit more comfortable for me, outside of all my work stuff being over here and kind of making it a mess. But I just want to start this video by saying thank you guys for supporting the channel. We hit 1,900 subscribers recently, and I just couldn't be more thankful. I mean, we're really close to 2,000, and it feels like yesterday we hit 1,000. I know it's been 3 years, and obviously many channels have a lot more views than I do at this point. I don't care about that. This is a passion project for me. This was never a job, so I obviously take any accomplishments much more to heart than just saying, oh, well, now I can make more money. I don't care about that. So I just want to thank you guys for supporting me. I know the content's been kind of slow because obviously that's not the same as it was in 2016, 2017, where I didn't have a job or anything, or I didn't go to school, or I was going to school and didn't have a job, and I could dedicate more time to YouTube. Now, I can't. I work a full-time career now that is probably honestly more than full-time. And it takes a lot of time away, so I try to film when I can, and this is one of those opportunities. If you guys haven't already, go check out the last video. It's fantastic. Got to hang out with a lot of my favorite people, and I'll mention one in a moment in particular that wasn't there, but I put a lot of work into it, even though I didn't film as much as I wanted to, so you guys should go check that out. I feel like it was a fantastic job video of mine. I'm pretty proud of that one, if you can't tell. You probably noticed, like I said, that one was missing, and that was Hayden. You probably noticed Hayden didn't arrive that day. He's been suffering from a pretty bad back injury, and was recently, within the last week or so, admitted into the hospital to have surgery done to try to repair this back injury. He's going through a pretty complicated and traumatic medical kind of thing right now. I really don't know the best way to explain it, without prying in too much into his personal life, I guess. Trying to respect him, and obviously not just be blabber his entire situation online, but just kind of TLDR it. He suffered a back injury at work probably back in March or April, and was in the hospital, or I don't know if he was in the hospital at the time, but he's currently in the hospital recovering from surgery. So if you guys want to just send him some good wishes, I would greatly appreciate it. That way we can encourage him to recover quickly and be back to doing rips in his cars again, whether it be the Speed or the SUK. And yeah, so just send him some positive wishes if you can. You guys who've been watching for a very long time know who Hayden is, and he's been a long mainstay of this channel, and he's a great friend that deserves to be supported, and we all just wish for him to recover quickly. But anyway, let's move on to the main topic at hand today, which is the Mark 8 GTI 380 and the discontinuation of the manual transmission. Now we're going to start off with the probably more divisive topic, which is the discontinuation of the manual transmission cars. And as a DSG owner, I feel like I'm very qualified to talk about this. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of the DSG transmission, but that's not what this video is about. But I do love manuals. I love manuals, and I think there are lots of cars that you should buy in a manual over an automatic. For example, I've been really big into B7 S4s lately, B6 and B7, more so B7, which obviously don't have great automatics. You want a manual if you're going to get one of those. And it's just cars like that. But I love manual transmissions, and I was honestly quite sad to see the confirmation of the rumors from Jalopnik. I posted briefly, I think last week at some point, on the community tab. If you guys don't check out the community tab, I'm active there pretty frequently. And I was kind of bummed about it. I was hoping it wasn't true, but Jalopnik's a pretty trustworthy source. Because obviously we're the only market from my understanding, from the research I have done on the Mark 8, we're the only market that gets the manual transmission. So it's kind of disappointing to see it being discontinued. Now, obviously we're going to talk about my feelings on it and why that's the case, and what to do going forward, because obviously we know, as Volkswagen GTI and Golf R enthusiasts, our days with our internal combustion motors are very numbered. We'll talk briefly about the ID GTI concept probably at some point in this too, because I do think that does play a part into the manual transmission's discontinuation. But I feel like a lot of things go into why the manual's being discontinued. I mean, we obviously like to talk about the obvious, and that's just not common anymore. I mean, it's not common people know how to drive them anymore. I mean, people are going to these better automatics than what people like me, for example, back 2016 when I got my first car at 16. I unfortunately don't come from a family of extreme money, so I didn't have a brand new snappy car with a ZF 8-speed or anything like that, something super crazy fast for my first car, like a lot of people I see on the internet these days that are 16, 17 with P9 S4s and stuff. You guys remember I had a 2003 Ford Explorer Sport Track that had a really crappy slush box of a 5-speed automatic that I could not stand. I hated that transmission. And obviously, back when those cars were new, manual transmission was by far the better transmission to buy when you were buying an enthusiast car. If it was offered an automatic, you didn't buy it. I mean, let's be real. Cars like the 996 and of that nature, or a Mark IV Supra with an automatic. I mean, I feel like the only people who bought those just like Supras, and a lot of people swap them, which is one thing, and back over to manuals. But the people who actually enjoyed those autos are dedicated fans, I would say. It's not for me personally. If I were in the market for a Mark IV Supra, you would not be seeing me looking at automatics, unless it was to be quickly being ripped out for a manual. But today, I mean, automatics have become extremely far advanced. I mean, the DSG transmission on its own is a huge win for automatic fans. As a DSG owner myself, it's probably the biggest reason I own a GTI, is I love the DCT stuff, and the GTI has just always been the go-to for DCT stuff if you want to get a DCT for cheap, and a good one at that, not some of the other DCT offerings on more economical cars that were prone to failures. I'd rather have a DCT. I'd rather have one of those over a CVT though. Anyway, the automatics have just become super far advanced. Even the torque converter based ones like the ZF 8-speed have become extremely fast, almost competing with DCTs. And so it just obviously gives manufacturers less of a desire to produce a manual. And we've seen that with a lot of cars that either were discontinued from their manuals, i.e. the GTI and Golf R coming soon, or even the Corvette not even being offered a manual transmission anymore. We saw it with the Supra being launched automatic only and only taking an uproar of enthusiasts to bring the manual back, and it's actually sold pretty well. We'll talk about supply and demand in a minute, because that's one thing that I can actually make use of from the math side of things from high school here. I learned a lot about supply and demand. Of course, that was more in my economics class. Anyways, math. But, the automatics have just surpassed the manual in sportiness, which is the main reason people bought manuals for the longest time, because technically they were the superior transmission for going fast, whether it was for, driving sporty on a back road or drag racing even. But now automatics have just become so good and so fast that even cars that are making, numbers that would probably be good for a 12-second at best in a manual are making 10 to 9-second passes. If you guys haven't seen some of the crazy drag runs that B9 S4s and SQ5s and stuff of that nature are running with hybrids and making significantly less power than a B58 or even, some muscle cars with that kind of power level and those kind of numbers, you guys should go check that out. I mean, they're really crazy. Of course, you guys know I'm an Audi Volkswagen egghead, so obviously I'm gonna, shout that kind of stuff out. But these autos have become extremely fast and are really good for sports cars now. I mean, that's why you see cars like even the GT3 RS, which used to be exclusively manual, is now exclusively PDK. It's just become this big thing. The automatics have just become superior for sports car driving, and manuals are now being delegated from the superior sports car transmission in terms of just constantly being the fastest offering a car can have, to being just the kind for mechanical one-to-one kind of feeling. And that obviously carries. A lot of people only buy manual cars today because of that feeling. And as someone who admittedly has never properly owned a manual transmission car, I've spent some seat time in them, and I can definitely see where that comes from. I've been in a handful of stick shift cars. I've been in a Mazda Speed 3. I've been in a Kia Spectra 5 with a manual transmission. I love you guys who've been long-term subscribers. I remember that car. It only just recently left the channel, not too long after I got the GTI. I've briefly drove Tyler's 370Z. If you guys might remember, well, it was actually in the video. If you guys are somehow friends with Ron on Snapchat, you might have seen it. I've driven Kaysen's Del Sol around. That's probably the car I've had the most successful seat time in a manual car in. It's the first manual car I ever drove on public roads, was Kaysen's Del Sol. I've driven Hayden's S2000. I've driven Hayden's Genesis Coupe. I always forget about that. It was one of the first times I ever drove manual on the channel, and it was a complete travesty. I've been in a lot of manual cars, and I can definitely see where the attachment to them and the wanting to feel mechanically connected comes from, because it is an intoxicating feeling knowing that you're in control. There's not computers controlling you. But I think at the end of the day, most enthusiasts that are wanting these cars to go fast, and that's all they really care about, they really care for that mechanical feeling, obviously opting for the automatics now. They've gotten to a point where they're genuinely faster than the fastest manual drivers. And that plays a part into supply and demand. Obviously, when there's no demand for manuals like there was in 2004, when autos were complete garbage cans of transmissions for sports car driving, people were buying manuals because it was the better option. There was a lot of demand for manual transmission cars at the time. That's why you see a lot of enthusiast cars from that era being only offered in manuals, such as the S2000. But now, it's hard to find a car that genuinely could make the best use of a manual. And even the cars that do have manuals, it just feels like they've been shoehorned in as a last-second thing just to say they can offer it. The Mark 8 is a clear example of this, in my opinion. It has a completely neutered, base model looking center console to me in the manual transmission, even in the Autobahns and like the high trim stuff, just because it seems like they just were like, okay, manual, you have it. It just seems like they didn't put any effort into making it feel just as high quality as the Mark 8s with the automatics did with their center consoles and stuff like that. Weird thing to take notice of, but I just was like, that stuck out to me when I was looking into buying one last year. Going on from that, you have the Supra, which, obviously they did retool a little bit to make the manual work better with it. I think that was a great decision to start offering it. Obviously, it shows their demand shot up for the Supra as a whole when the manual transmission was introduced. And I can't exactly remember off the top of my head, but they're saying that they're selling, I think from what I remember, they're selling more manuals than automatics now with the Supras, which is insane, because the Supra is a hot car. That is a hot commodity of a car, and people are just snatching these things up. But in terms of the Volkswagen, I think more goes into it than just, the demand part of it, because obviously the DSG is superior in a lot of ways. Obviously you don't get that mechanical feeling, but it shifts faster, it's more economical, it's a little bit sharper 0 to 60. It's easier to commute with versus a manual transmission. And if we go back to the Mark 7, it handles tuning better. If you guys aren't familiar with Mark 7s, the tuning world in these cars is absolutely astronomical. But one thing that always hindered manual transmission cars, outside of the rare crank walk incident that really plagued mostly 15 to 17 cars, or 15 16s, I think 17s managed to squeak away from it, was clutches. The clutches on those cars would be destroyed with a stage 1 tune, which is probably the most basic tune you can do for these Mark 7 cars. And it's frying these clutches up. You have to get a clutch. You have to really, budget away some money for a clutch when you buy your access port, or your one port if you go HPA or something like that. Or your tuning thing, whatever it may be, your trip to APR, even to an APR dealer to go get flashed. You got to budget in the money to get a clutch put in, whether that be South Bend or something of that nature. And especially when you go stage 2, it just becomes a ticking time bomb on the stock clutch. If you try to go stage 2 on stock clutch, you will need a clutch quickly. And I think that played a part into it. I think the Volkswagen hasn't just dropped the ball with the manual transmissions and putting good clutches in them that can handle power. Volkswagen kind of was just like, its cost cut a little bit and put a clutch in that can handle stock power and nothing more. And I think that plays a huge part in it, and why the clutches on these cars are so just yikes. The shifter feel, from what I understand, from what I've heard, isn't the best thing in the world on the stock shifters. A lot of people do, short throws and stuff like that, and it fixes that a lot. But I think the majority of people that went DSG probably did because they owned a manual Mark 7 and didn't like how much extra work had to be put into them to get the manuals to be just as fast as the autos in terms of horsepower. And while I do think that's kind of unfortunate, it's just a part of modifying cars. If you want to go fast, you got to, pay to play. But I think that did play a part in it. I think that Mark 8 sales of the manuals dropped because people automatically who are coming from Mark 7s are going to assume, man, I'm going to drop like an extra 800 to 1,000 before to take it to a shop and have a clutch job done to put a south bend in it or something like that. Just so it can handle 350 horsepower. And I feel like that played a part in it. And obviously, it's now got the 7-speed, which I believe is the DQ381. I don't know for sure. It might be the 500, but I think the 500 is only reserved for like the R3 from the factory, at least. I could be wrong on that. And 381's a really solid transmission. I would like the 381. But I think that plays a huge part in it. It's just people are going like getting the latest version of the DSG, which is really, really good. And because of the fact the manuals just didn't quite take the power without doing a clutch job. And while obviously most cars, when you start dumping a bunch of power out of them, need clutches. I mean, Evos and their quartermasters, for example. But these cars, you barely do anything. You get a tune file and you're on stock equipment. All of a sudden, you need a clutch. It can be kind of a negative turn. It can be a huge turnoff for people who are wanting manual Mark 7s or Mark 8s. But I think that probably plays the biggest part. It's just the manuals haven't been the best quality with the Mark 7s, and I think even the Mark 6s. So I mean, it only became worse as time went on for the manuals case. Volkswagen seemed to really just be making them an afterthought, and they finally just got to a point where the demand's so low for them that they didn't even want to halfway do the job. They were just like, let's just continue it. But I think I've talked long enough on that. I've given my thought points on why it's being discontinued. Feel free to give your theories. Obviously, I know that, as a Gen Z guy myself, that it's just not common. People know about it anymore, and that's what makes all the old people on Facebook, because they're, these 60, 70-year-olds on Facebook posting a millennial anti-theft device, and it's a 5-speed shifter. I think that's just like the introduction of power steering. I mean, it's just, time goes on and technical advancements are made. It's just unfortunate. Electric cars are going to be the same way. So let's talk about the GTI 380 specifically. Now, this car, in my opinion, is meh at best. I think it's mid. Honestly, I feel like it's such a cash grab of a car. And I love Volkswagen. It's been around my life for a long time. I own a Mark 7. And, I'm a big fan of these cars. But I think the GTI 380 is such a cash grab. I mean, the only thing that makes it special is the fact it's only offered with a manual transmission, which you can get in a regular GTI for cheaper, and you don't get all these extra stuff, sure, like the 19-inch wheels. But if you're buying these cars to modify them, there's no point in getting a 380, because all of these things are things you would do in the aftermarket. I think you get a black roof. It's called vinyl wrap. You go to Metro Restyling and you buy, a couple feet roll of it and call it a day. You got a black roof. Obviously it does have exclusive colors, which is cool and all, but in my opinion, it just seems like such a cash grab on the fact, because they know they're discontinuing them, and it was announced when the 380 was unveiled. Oh, by the way, we're also killing off the manuals. In my opinion, it should have been something more special and should be able to give a reason for people to want to go buy them. It's the same thing with the Golf R 20th anniversary. I feel like that was a bit of a cash grab as well. While obviously it's cool to do special anniversaries, make it special. Make it truly special instead of just changing the color on the badges and calling it a special edition. People can do that in the aftermarket. I've done it. My badges are red for a reason. My car was a non-performance badge car that came with silver badges, and I wanted the red, so I made it happen myself. I mean, it's just, I feel like with the Mark 8 Volkswagen, it's just kind of just, doing the bare minimum. And I love these cars, and the Gen 4 motor is no slouch, but like the rest of it really needs more love. And obviously in Europe, the Club Sport exists, which is a significantly better version of the GTI, which isn't sold here. I've constantly said if they brought the Club Sport to the US, I'd be hard pressed not to go trade my car in them. I love the Club Sport line, and I love the Mark 8. Getting a Mark 8 Club Sport would be pretty sick. And when this was first teased, I was like, oh, we're finally getting a Club Sport S in the States. This is it. We're getting a really fast 380 horsepower Mark 8. I didn't expect for it to be a manual transmission only model that carries some stuff from the SE, and it's just like, here's a black roof and black 19-inch wheels, and ta-da, special edition. I personally was hoping for a North American or just a global Mark 8 Club Sport S, and I'm still holding out for it. Volkswagen, if you're watching this for some reason, please bring a Club Sport S to the States. Give the Mark 8 a true send-off for the internal combustion engine GTI. I mean, obviously we're getting the ID GTI concept now, which is supposed to be, I'm assuming, the Mark 9's basis to replace the Mark 8 when the Mark 8's time is inevitably going to end. And I think Volkswagen, if they're going to go the route of full electrification and discontinuation of its gas models, they need to send the King off one good time. They need to give it one last big push, and I think giving a Club Sport S would be the best way to do it. And obviously I talked about this at the end of the Mark 9 video where I talked about it going electric. But I think that's just the best way to do it, is just to crank it up one more time, and sure, make it even a manual exclusive. I'd buy it even then, as someone who has been a DSG fanboy since day one. I will put my money up on a Mark 8 Club Sport S, even if it's manual only. But anyway, guys, I think I've talked for too long. It's a 20-minute video now. I want to say thank you guys for watching and listening to me rant. At the end of this week, hopefully, I'll be working with these guys and getting my 3071 installed on the car. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. So expect that video coming soon. We're going to do a couple other videos and stuff with my Mark 7 specifically in the future, my GTI. If you guys want to see some fun big turbo GTI content, be sure to subscribe for more content coming soon. Excuse me. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time. Have a great day, guys.